go ahead and get started. So our agenda is here. So CCRPI, CSI, we want to kind of clarify the role of surveys as it relates to these things. And then, so far, we have slated Mr. James Barthelmett, the Executive Director of Innovation Strategy and Governance, to come and share some CCRPI projections with you. This is the presentation that Mr. Barthelmett, well, first he shared it with us when we had to do our impact check. He actually shared some very positive news in terms of our data and what those projections are like, because you know, data, if you've been to one of the principal copies last month, you know that data is a very important piece of the CSI designation. Continuous support and improvement is what that stands for, as well as us being able to get off of that list. And then actually want to get some information from you. That's what the parent participation and involvement piece is going to involve. And then, as you know, we've had students here for a while. Spring is very, very busy. So there are many, many events that are happening next month in April as well as in May. I don't think I put any of the May events up, but we'll talk about some of those April events so that you will be abreast of the information. So first thing that we're going to do is talk about the role of surveys as it relates to CCRPI. So one part of our school improvement is gathering feedback internally and externally. So some things are going to come from within the building, some things are going to come from within the district, and then some things are going to come from other stakeholders. So if you remember last month, you did a Georgia Student Health Survey, and I'll get to that after this piece. But that's a part of the external collection of feedback that's going to inform some of our systems, our processes, and our leadership. And all of this is done in an effort to improve our school. And that would be the case whether we were designated as a CSI school or not. Because you always want to make sure that you are getting better. You want to make sure that you are providing equitable educational opportunities for all students in the building, not just one population or another. So we're going to make sure that today we kind of clarify some things that I think may not have been very clear last month and or in the past. So there is a survey that exists that is called the CCSD Culture and Climate Survey. So that's one of the two that we're going to talk about this morning. The purpose of the Culture and Climate Survey is to inform building leader practices and professional growth goals. So that is a survey that has been created by the CCSD Human Resources Department. And that is used as a part of the leader's evaluation, and that is done by the immediate supervisor of the leader. Okay, so usually those results are not shared, well, those results are not shared externally. Not usually, those are not meant for public consumption. But in an effort to get better as a building leader, as a school leader, and just in general, the results were shared with our staff. So the Whit Davis staff here in the building, we did have those results shared at a faculty meeting, and we did have some dialogue around that survey. Because again, we want to identify areas of improvement. So we use a Notice of Wonder protocol. Dr. Hanks and I, if you do not know Dr. Hanks, she is the assistant principal here at Whit Davis. She's back there waving at you all. So we use the Notice of Wonder protocol with staff to identify some areas of improvement. Does everyone understand and know what a Notice of Wonder protocol is? Okay, well, it's very simple. You show the data, or you show whatever the information is that you're seeking to collect feedback on. You ask, or sometimes you have people write, it just depends on the setting, like, what do you notice? So what are some trends that you're able to identify? What's popping out at you as you look at the data? And so, you know, gave people a few minutes to process that, see what they noticed, and then what do you wonder? So based on what you've observed, based on what you've noticed, what wonderings, aka questions, do you have? And from there, we were able to look at some of the information, see where we had some downward trends, and faculty and staff shared their thoughts, as well as, some possible resolutions for how to address some of those things. Some of those things have already been implemented from that conversation. Some things will continue to be implemented as we have some conversation. Are there any questions so far? Yes.
So, was that survey, I guess, the feedback was anonymous, or the feedback from the meeting was anonymous? Because
I'm sorry?
I said the feedback from the survey was anonymous, but
Yes.
the conversation, the feedback, if you received feedback, you could probably see time.
Oh, notice and wonder. So I noticed, I don't think you know in a minute, but just say, I noticed that last spring, the feedback on behavior was higher than it was this spring. Okay, what is your wondering about it? So one, the obvious one is, I wonder what happened. I wonder why that is the case. And then you're having some dialogue about that. And that's actually one of the, things that stood out. So let's take a look.
Can we ask what the date was of that, meeting with staff to share the results and like when that happened?
You said when did the faculty meeting happen? On March the 11th?
Okay.
Alright, so this is what our staff saw, and again, this impacts my evaluation, but I wanna make sure that you all are able to see what they saw, so that you understand that the conversation that we had as staff. So, there were 8 domains, and on the left side is the school's information, and on the right side is the district's information. So when I say the district, of course, I'm talking about the Clark County School District and all of the schools and all of the faculty and staff that took the survey. Okay, so we had learning environments and let me clarify with the key at the bottom tells you that yellow is fall 2022, spring is, dark blue is spring 2023, and purple is fall of 2023. So, learning environment is one. Looking a little slow, just bear with me. Observation and feedback is one, is another. And I'll just give you the names of the domains. Professional development, student growth measures, instructional planning, peer culture, workload average, retention average, and the bottom just says my school is a welcoming environment to all staff regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or culture. And those were some of the results. And the last one, the district provides an environment that supports my long-term professional growth. So that's zooming out to the district level, there's no longer at the building level. So as I mentioned, we did notice that there was some downward trends as a faculty and staff. But where our conversation kind of landed was the area where we had the most decline. And that was in the area of behavior. And that lives in learning environment. So we had some more in-depth, I would say, dialogue, in that area because of some of the concerns that teachers expressed. So one thing, for example, that we talked about in our conversation was, what happens when a student does something, how are the behaviors addressed? Teachers were not sure how the behaviors were addressed or what happened when a student exhibited certain behaviors. So I was able to let them know that when a student extreme behaviors, let's say they do something like hit a peer, hit a teacher, something that's on the extreme side of things. Those are atypical behaviors. Those are not the behaviors that dominate our building, but they are obviously very serious and they are areas of concern. So I said, when you do not see the student the next day, that means unfortunately that student has been suspended. And so, I think that kind of helped. But, to further address the problem, we have created a document that lets teachers know, if a student is suspended or if a student has to go through a timeout in our reset room, there's a document that houses that information now. So they're not having to figure out, did they just miss school? Are they just absent from school? That was what happened as a result of that conversation. Now, that's not everything, and that is not all things. But we only had a limited amount of time in that meeting. Some conversations take place in our SILT meeting that will continue. If you don't know what SILT is, that's our School Improvement Leadership Team. So we have those meetings twice a month. Some of the conversations take place there. Team members are always more than welcome to take those concerns to their SILT team members, who brings them to us. And of course, our doors are always open. We have an open door policy that has always been the case. But again, I did want to clarify some of, the purpose. The purpose of this survey is very different from the purpose of the Georgia Health Survey, which you all had the opportunity to take. Yes, ma'am.
The second one, I can see like the rest of the questions kind of cut off just because of space. What would it say after that? School leaders regularly support me in addressing student behavior when I have.
I don't know. I would have to try to go back into the dashboard and see. But we'll see. I'm guessing that it's probably concerns, something along those lines, but I don't know, so I don't want to make anything up to you. Are there any questions before we shift gears? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Holmes.
I just know, I think this is just like the way y'all's survey software spits it out, but I did notice that it doesn't use the same scale along the bottom.
I think that's just.
I have to use like software surveys sometimes, and sometimes it does that, but it does kind of make it a little bit harder to compare the school to the district because our scale is ending at 4 on some of them. Yeah.
So you're going from max 3 on the bottom to max 4 because just off by the water, it doesn't use it, so they're not going to get it.
And I can speak to that a little bit. I'm Dr. Worthy, I am the principal supervisor for Wood Davis. One of the things with this particular survey, and I say a little bit because I don't work in the human resources department that developed the survey. However, when that scale changes from like a 3 to 4, it's because of where it was ranked. So they had a level to rank it 1, 2, 3, or 4, and if it didn't go up to a 4 within that average ranking, it's showing you the averages across the bottom. So that's the difference in the two. In some questions, there were more 4 ratings, and so you got past that 4. In others, there weren't, and so it didn't show that. But the actual scales of how they ranked on every question was the same.
Right, but it's.
I just mean like visually when you present it.
Yeah.
The bars look different.
They do, they do. And so that's why, again, the whole goal is to look at the averages. There are comments as well that are not shared in print version, even with our leaders, but shared during their evaluations. Around here are the general themes around comments. Because again, we want to make sure that we're able to get as much positive feedback as possible from, and when I say positive feedback, we want to get as much feedback as possible from our teachers, but we want to make sure they're comfortable enough to give us the feedback. And so we give the themes to our leaders to share that information as well, but then when we look at those, the numbers, it really is looking at what was the average and what does it tell us. This particular survey goes into a deeper detail and talks about, do we have net promoters or do we have net detractors, and in what areas, and so we're able to talk through those areas as well.
So if you're using a traditional yes score, is this a type of scale out of 5?
Let me pull up the questions and see. I want to say yes.
It seems like it's out of 5.
I want to say yes. yes, I don't think he goes above that.
And is the data of this publicly available?
It is not, because this particular survey, is an internal survey. And so that's why we give you all an external survey, so that we can, that data is publicly available. That's the one that you do, through the state, and it's actually on the state website. That particular, data is lagging. So you just completed it, it won't be available until the summer. Yes,
Is
ma'am.
this a flat document, or is it like one of those dashboard things?
It's a dashboard.
Okay, so is there a way to change it so that the, horizontal scales are the same on the district side and the school side, to be able to, you know, because some of them, like that one's 4 and 4, but if you go back down a little bit,
Mhm.
the school side is on another scale up to 3, so it just kind of looks like the data's being a little skewed visually.
That would actually be, something that would go back into the programmer. So when we look at it, this is actually snipped directly from the dashboard itself. So this is what it looks like. And so the training that I received and how to go through this data with my leaders is looking at those averages and where they fall and identifying what areas do we need to work on.
So will there be a copy of the survey that we could somehow have a look at and digest?
No, ma'am.
Because this is scrolling so fast that I can't even read the individual, I can't go one by one.
But
Digest
remember,
information.
you're correct. And remember, you won't get a copy of this because that's not the purpose of this survey. The purpose of this survey is for human resources, and it informs our leaders and their evaluations. So our leaders are evaluated, on using the state document, which has 8 different areas that we evaluate them on, and this helps to inform some of that rate. So it'll be like me giving you, it'll be like, for example, our doctor's office doing a survey of their staff and how things are going, and then passing out the results to all the patients. They wouldn't do that. That's why we give 2 separate surveys, one that you have input on and that you're able to actually look at because you gave input, but only our faculty and staff gave input to this.
You're already showing us this, why not just let us look at it?
There was a request for this data, and so we were trying to honor the request for the data. This is not something that all of our principals are doing across the district. Now, they talk to their, excuse me, wait, hold on, please, I'm sorry. They will talk to their staff, because again, it helps to inform them. So if I'm informing my principal on, you know, here's some areas that we noticed, what are some things we can put in place that would improve this? Then that's one thing that we can do. But, it's not something that is just, that all of our principals have said, hey, by the way, let me show you my professional learning data. I'm sorry, back to
No, I'm sorry, I guess I misunderstood. When Dr. Hooker was here, I
Yes.
think we were under the impression that this was public information, and he said it was public and that it was available to everybody and that we could see it. So maybe there was an element that we didn't quite understand.
And so when Dr. Hooker, and so we went back and asked Dr. Hooker, what was it that you wanted to be shared because you made that comment? And, remember, when Dr. Hooker made the comment, Dr. Hooker had just come into our district. This has been in play for 3 years now. And when we had this in play, this was put in place to inform legal practices. We also had multiple surveys going on at the same time. So we went back to him and said, what of our principal surveys do you want to be shared? He said, oh, I thought it was just a general survey. We're like, no, that culture and climate survey informs their practices. And it's not that we're being, we're trying to hide the data, but it really is to inform their practice. And so it would just like be, it would be like you coming in wanting to see my leader evaluation, survey data that was given for me. It's just, I don't have a better word, it's not appropriate. Because that data is to inform the leader practices and the coaching that leader needs. However, the questions are very similar to the ones that you receive as a parent on the student health survey, because it's about the environment, it's about the learning, it's about, you know, do you feel welcome when you come into a school, do you feel welcome in the building? Those questions are very similar.
It was appropriate, Dr. Hooker thought it was appropriate for us to see this. But we don't think it's appropriate for us to actually be able to look at it.
Dr. Hooker asked me to ask Principal Dean to share with you all what was shared with the teachers. This is what was shared with the teachers.
You didn't have knowledge.
The teachers were able to view it in the document, and that access has been removed. Because again, that is not the purpose of the survey.
So Dr. Hooker was incorrect.
Dr. Hooker was incorrect in saying, yes, we can have copies of this.
So what survey can we?
The Georgia Student Health Survey that you actually have input in.
Now, you mentioned that, there was focus on the particular behavior area. Was that based off of the delta between the district or the delta between what was changed? What was decreasing the most statistically year over year? Meaning, are you comparing what you feel like you need to improve on based against the average of the district or the biggest delta between previous years?
So what I look at is, I look at it over the years to see what's happening.
For the school or against the district?
I look at it for the school as I'm coaching that individual leader. Then I go back and look at it across the district to see what trends I see that need to be met for, I support 11 different leaders. So I look at the trends to help figure out, are there trends across the board? Now, I don't support 11 leaders on one side of the city. I support across the city, but I have 7 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 2 high schools, and the alternative school. And so what I do is I look at, are there trends across the board to see if there are things that we need to provide during professional learning for more than just one-on-one coaching. You had a question, she's been waiting so patiently.
Yes, okay. So,
And that number was very low too.
so I was wondering if you guys felt like we had, full participation, or close to full participation in, okay.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And it's hard because again, there's so many surveys and we try to push and ask people to, give the survey, we remind them, this is the survey that's gonna inform this. This is the survey that we're using to help build this. Some people will take it, some people don't. But when I say staff, that includes everybody in the building. It's teachers, it's custodial, it's nutrition staff, it's everybody. So we make, computers available to make sure everyone has access, but it's just but those numbers are very different from school to school. Yes, sir.
Right, so it sounds very, clear that you all are allowing us some data that you don't have to provide in this particular, right? So, like this that. Beyond, the main point is, what are some of the topics regarding the students and leadership that we need to know about that we can be helpful with? We talk about discipline. What else, do we need to know about that we can be helpful with in this setting?
No, that's a great
Is there
question.
anything else in your other topic?
Yeah, I would like to hear that too, and then, see how that, this one is, that, I want to be able to help the school become, the best, I want to be the best. So, what can we as parents, do to help, encourage that and get us on track and on that goal? Something tangible that we can do that, sorry, I'm not an elder, but I'm just trying to.
No, those are great questions. Those are great questions. And, I'll start, I'll let Principal Dean pick up. One of the things is, as there are, concerns around, for example, the discipline stuck out. That's not something that you can, really help with, unless it's your individual child, right? So we're working with parents around those things. I think your feedback is important. Are there things that you would like to see as it relates to the things that are happening in the building in terms of what support we can provide for our children? Are there additional, what, for example, a parent university, would that be helpful in helping parents connect more with the school around the academics? Right now, I know there's a big push across the district, people wanting to get back into the buildings and volunteer, coming in and being able to read to a child, that's very helpful. Signing up to be a mentor, that's really helpful. And again, you have your own children, so I'm just giving you things you might be able to pass off to someone else too. But being able to, come in and help whenever the call is pushed out, and just communicating, just let us know what your skill set is, so that we can actually build upon that. Principal Dean, is there anything specific that SIL has come up with yet around how parents can, assist? Is there anything they can be more hands-on with? Oh, and I'll add, this is my principal brain, PTO. So if you're not present in PTO, becoming a part of PTO, because that's that bridge builder between parents, the community, and school, right? So being a part of that as well. I see your hand, give me 1 second. Is there anything else that Sil has come up with yet, for parents?
Not through Silk, but LSGT, we do have some ideas. Mrs. Lawrence, she's been very helpful in pretty much leading that charge, so not necessarily helping per se, but actually getting you all into the building in different settings. So not always, like academics are important, of course, we know that. But also getting you all in the building in more relaxed settings. So for example, there's a parents and paints, LSGT and PTO probably are approaching that together. But being able to come into the building to actually see what's happening, because sometimes we get things, secondhand, and it's not always accurate information, so being present to see, for yourself, and also just coming in and having some dialogue with myself and Dr. Haynes about what some of your concerns are. I will back up to say, you got a little pink slip if you came in and signed in, and that's a link to our lunch and learn. So we had our first lunch and learn on this past Wednesday. It was about the Georgia milestones. So if you have students in grades 3 through 5, that presentation, Dr. Haynes is our assistant principal, but she's also our testing coordinator. She had a lot of good information to share. So if you have opportunity to come in for that, that's going to be a regular occurrence once a month here. And we plan to do things like focus on getting wisdom. So that's not the only thing, but that's our ELA curriculum, helping you to better understand what that's about and what that involves, so that you can then help your student at home. But we certainly want to engage you, because obviously parents are a very important part of our triangle. You have, the school community, you have students, you have parents. Like we have to work together. So it's very much about ensuring that we're all aligned and on the same page, because as Ms. Dumont said, I want Good Davis to be the best. And I want that for all students, and I'm always going to say it like that. All students should have equitable education. All students should have to become the school. Yes, sir.
Hold on 1 second, because I asked him to wait. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you need it.
I'm Mr. Pino. I've been a parent supporter for a couple of years now. Wanted to volunteer to go on a field trip and was legally vetted to be associated with the school in that regard. Regularly attended PTO functions and became heavily involved in all the PTO stuff last year. And I have felt it harder to be a part of that this year, but I have still done my best to support the school whenever and however I can, whether it's bringing the teachers Chick-fil-A, or stopping in to do an art class with the first grade class, and help facilitate some of the and support the teachers in that regard. And this week, it seems as though an additional barrier has gone up, and that's my purpose for being here. I wanted to vocalize on Monday. I brought a bag of snacks for my child's teacher, and we got here early in the car rider line, put the car in park, and tried to, just go drop it off. And I was informed that there's a new process that meticulously documents any visitor for any reason, and requires the teachers to be the facilitator of any visits from anyone. That's fine. I left the snacks there, and they had them delivered. And then Tuesday I came back to try out the system. I had an art project that we were working on at home, and my daughter had her art class, and I wanted to bring that art project in to help the teacher and let my kid do just normal stuff. I just tested the system and I talked to the teacher who just happened to have the time to try to work through the new form. And, although I don't know exactly what is on the form, I didn't really care to ask. It seemed like it took a lot of work to facilitate my name being put onto a list. So that's like this new wall. So then I come into the school and my name is vetted on the list after asking the overworked teacher to fill out this long form to get my name on the list. Then scanning my driver's license into the official system and taking a picture of myself after already being legally vetted. And then I had to be escorted to the art room and then escorted from the building as part of this new policy. And I don't know if it came from the district level. I don't know if there was an incident which necessitates what I feel is pretty stern increase in security. I feel as though everybody knows me here, and I think the overarching concern that I have is if these policies are supposed to go into place to help, but communication isn't happening between parents and schools, and this guy is not wanting to come in anymore because it's being a little, it's too much. I don't want to have to ask the teacher. I don't have to let you go. I was a teacher for over a decade. It just seems bureaucratic, and it seems as though if I'm not willing to come in, how are you guys going to get anybody else? Because I'm that guy. Y'all know me. I'm that guy. And if it's that hard for me to come in and visit, and I felt as though it was, I don't want to exaggerate and hyperbole in prison statements and that. You got to do what you got to do. Keep kids safe. The policy is great. All the feedback and the surveys are great. We want to be involved in great. But on the ground, in the trenches, it seems like additional walls are being put up to protect maybe some people's butts or create distance between parents, and I think that's like the underlying concern that some of the parents are feeling, that we're being distanced from the ability to interact or support at home. Because I've been there in that PTO.
So I can speak from the district piece, and then Principal Dean can share what was put in place. First, let me say thank you, because we don't get lots of parents that come in and do the things that you described doing, so thank you for that. From the district, 2 years ago, we put in place some increased security measures so that everyone had to come through the front office because people were coming through back doors, doors that weren't secure and things of that nature. So we wanted everyone to come to the front office. In terms of visitors, if there are visitors, you're right, we do have an increased system in every school building, in every front office where everyone has to scan a driver's license. The purpose of that is because that system recognizes sex offenders. And so we have to make it, and it pops up and says this person can't go in the building. So that is the system that came from the district office. Volunteers who come into the building, if you're coming regularly, we do have that volunteer form that we ask everyone to complete and do a background check. That is only if you're going to be left alone with students, right? So if I'm a teacher and you're coming to my classroom and you're going to take a group out to read with them, then you're left alone with them and out of my purview. So we need to make sure that you have a good background check. So that's what that form is for. If you're just coming on a temporary basis, you're coming just to drop off something, or you're coming, the teacher called and said, hey, we got this special project, I know you have this cool skill set, can you come help support it? We just want them to make people aware, because what has happened is there's been an increase of individuals that were coming in different doors and not coming through the system. So what Principal Dean asked me was around the district policy for safety and security. I reminded her of what the policy states around visitors, which is what I just shared around. If they're there regularly, they need a background check if they're going to be left alone. If not, then they just need to be in the purview of a staff member, right? That should not be a barrier The only thing that's really changed is that from the district level is that increased security system that does the driver's license check. And that can't be done, that has to be done. Now, I will say, the other piece that was put in place, Principal Dean and I talked about, because you're not the first person to mention the new sign-in piece, for volunteers. We talked about that. I think it's more of just letting people know who's coming in the building. Because in some instances, and this doesn't happen often, but it has happened, we will have parents who will come in the building and they check themselves in, we don't know the purpose, but then they'll go and confront a child about an incident that occurred with another child. That has happened, unfortunately. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. And so it is important that Ms. Moore, as a receptionist, knows, beyond you just scanning, hey, does so-and-so know you're coming to their class today? Because sometimes parents have shown up and that has happened. I think that we can look at what that system looks like, we talked about it, and make sure that it's not duplicating what you're already doing with sign in, but we do need to make sure that Ms. Moore knows, yes, Dr. Worthy is expecting, this particular parent on this day. Now, the day you come in and say, hey, I got a surprise for so-and-so, well, that's cool. Still, we just need you to scan, the document. But if you're coming to stick and stay, then we need to know the purpose.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. You provided me with a key piece of information that I have not yet considered, and that resolves the entirety of my issue, and I would just say perhaps consider streamlining it for the teachers.
Definitely, no. And I'm over here taking notes, because whenever I come to work with my principals, we keep a notes tab that we go back through and talk through different things. So I'm definitely taking notes, and we've already talked about it, because again, you're not the first person to say that was somewhat of a barrier, but maybe we just need to tweak it, because we need to make sure Ms. Moore knows. But we also want to make sure, I've been a principal in this district, and so I know I've had it happen in my own building, where parents come in and slip by. They signed in, but they slipped by and got to a child to confront them about why did you take my baby's water bottle yesterday, or why are you pushing my child on the bus, and we can't do that, right? Yes, sir.
If it's okay, I want to go back to the question you had, which was about, in addition to behavioral, or even looking deeper behavior, what y'all are doing about some of the climate survey gaps and stuff. And I want on two levels. One is the gap between from year to year, fall to spring, year to year, but also between the district and year. And I know y'all did the notes and wonder, and I would love to hear more, what the people are interested about what the big gaps were that you saw. What are the growth areas? What are the big and I'll just say, because it's rumor, but it's in the experience here about, we're hearing about potential exodus of a lot of teachers, and that's going to impact all of us a lot. And if we want accountability on that and improve that, this survey is a really big part of that. So we'd love to hear what you talk to the teachers about, and about your plan for improving some of those gaps. Maybe that's here, maybe that's at a different venue, if you really want to have time to get to the rest of the turn of that before we get off track of that.
So, I will say that's still a work in progress, so those conversations continue. You mentioned the word accountability, and I think that goes both ways, just like communication does, because one of the things that I am continuing to see and hear is that there is a gap in communication. So, sometimes there are things that you hear and administration doesn't hear. There may be things that Dr. Worthy hears or is told, with that administration has no clue. So, all around the board, I think that gap needs to be closed. And that would take, this takes administrators, that would take this as teachers, that takes this as parents, that takes transparent communication. Because that's something that is not always the case here at Davis. So I would say that's one thing, is.
My reaction to that is I profoundly disagree.
Elaborate, please.
I think that multiple things have been pretty clear about where we see gaps. And so if that is viewed as a lack of communication, I don't understand that.
So, have you and I had a conversation? Because I don't think that we have. So I understand that you have some concerns, but again, those are not issues. So that is what I'm saying. Myself, Dr. Hanks, this is here, we Davis, some have shared those concerns with someone, and that's fine. But I'm saying, because we're here in this building, and those things are not shared with us, that makes it hard to go ahead and figure out how to solve that problem. If it has to go, or not has to, but let's just say you took your concern outside of the building. That's fine, that's your right, but it has to come back inside the building, because the building is where it has to be addressed. So I am asking, going forward, that if there are concerns, we start within the building, because that is not happening. That is not always happening. There have been some instances where, yes, we've had some conversations, but there are instances where, you know, we ask each other directly, have we had a conversation? The answer is going to be no. Now, elsewhere, I can't speak to, but I can speak to what has happened here, and that's not the only piece. I think that there are some other things that need to be addressed, but, like, something that has come up a lot, has come up multiple times, that I am actually curious about, is, we've had the question posed, what tangible things are you going to do for teachers? So, there are lots of things that we do, but those seem to miss the mark. So I am curious as to, like, what's really wanted, basically. So I give you all some examples. Every month, during the faculty meeting, we have a word called Wildcat Pride Awards. Every teacher or faculty and staff member, not just for teachers, we nominate each other, that person gets the award, that person gets the lunch, that person gets the mug. That's one thing that happens consistently on a regular basis. There's different opportunities in the school year where teachers are gifted with certain things to show our appreciation. There are certain times when teachers are given lunch. There are certain times when teachers are given dinner. You know, if we go in the classroom, we leave feedback for the teacher. Sometimes it's not formal. I think there's a misconception that all feedback is formal. It's not. I'll go in there, I'll do an observation, I'll leave a sticky note on the window or on the door on my way out. It tells like what the clothes from the class are. So that's a different type of, I guess, appreciation for what's happening. So those things are happening. And Dr. Haynes, you can chime in if there are some things that I forgot. But based on what we're currently doing, I would like to understand like what the gap is between what we're doing and like what the expectation is, or not necessarily the expectation, but what would like to be seen. Because that is a question that has come up at this last coffee and in other spaces as well. Mr. Blunt?
I was wondering, and some issues that, I guess that you brought up are these, wondering if maybe business could go to the next, or contact LSPT team, and that maybe be discussed there, if they could attend those meetings, you know? Is that something that's a possibility? I don't know, like, I'm just wondering, because that's the meaning of that team is for, I think.
So it's a good question. There is a document on the website that shows what, if you have this concern, this is where to take it. It's a whole flow chart, and it tells you exactly where to take it. So, for example, if it's a leadership concern, it comes to me, because I supervise and evaluate the leader. If it's you know, my child has a problem on the bus, it goes to transportation, and that person's contact information is given. So there's a flow chart that's already on the website that tells you exactly where to go and where, you know, to address various concerns. If it comes to me, then, you know, I make every effort to make an appointment with the person, to talk with them. If we can't talk, in person, then we talk on the phone. Sometimes it's on my way home, you know, sometimes it's in the evening. I call parents all the time and try to address those situations. And then of course, I try to get those back to the school, because I can resolve it, but it's not gonna help anything if we can't get it resolved here in the building. So I try to get it back to the building, but that is available on the district website. It's under the families tab, and it says if you have a concern, here's who you talk to, and has that person's contact information already listed. Yes, ma'am.
I have a suggestion that's related to what you guys asked me about. Here's related to the visitor policy as well. So I agree. I think it might be worth looking at sort of tweaking what the procedure looks like, but still follow the policy, because then it's a way that we can support the teachers, and it shows that you all are supporting the teachers. I wonder, I mean, I sort of shared Mr. Peter. specific suggestion is maybe there's a way that the procedure could be modified that, or sure it's pre-approved, but maybe it could be pre-approved live, you know, so it takes something off you all as the approvers, and it takes something off the teachers as far as having to do that form, but maybe, I think in the past, like, when our daughter was in kindergarten, like, they would still call, like, hey, this lady's here, you know her, can she come here, right? That's just to kind of have a little bit more flexibility.
Thank you, that's a good suggestion. And I wanted to step back one moment, I know you have a question right here, but I want to step back because you were asking around, district, what is the district doing to help closing the gaps that we've seen?
I mean, I'm really interested in what Davis is doing.
Oh, gotcha.
But I wasn't interested in the gap between the district and Davis.
I'm sorry, say the last
I
part.
was interested in the gap between the district scores and the Davis.
And so I'll tell you, across the board, they were very similar, across the district.
All right.
Well, and again, when I look at all of my schools, I see the same themes, is what I should say. So the themes that arise are the same across the board. For my elementary teachers, it's been, there's not enough playing time. That was a common theme at every single school. Part of that is due to a new curriculum, in ELA. So we're looking at how do we address that, for our teachers. Another common theme across the board was around discipline. Discipline is a concern in every building right now because it's kind of ramped up a little bit. I'm not even sure what's causing that. I have no idea, but it has ramped up. And now it's not severe in terms of, there's this influx of fights or things of that nature, but there's an influx of disrespect and talking back, and teachers want that out of their rooms. But we try to teach teachers, we can take it out the room, but when they come back, they're gonna do it again if you don't address it. So let us help you address it. Let us show you some strategies you can do that will address it. And if it continues, then you come out the room, right? So that's a common theme. Another common theme was around support from the district in terms of professional learning. So that was a common theme, like they really want their professional learning to be more in tune to the things that they're doing. They feel like it's kind of disconnected some this year. So those are some of the gaps that we're looking at.
Is there a way we can, shift just a bit or really connect the dots from that academic, the new curriculum, and maybe some issues you talk about discipline, just how is all of that helping to, or I guess what are we doing to help shape where our scores are? The academic enhancements for our students.
Yeah.
That's why so
Yes.
how can we do that? I understand, those things with adults and all that piece, but I really want to better understand that and how we better academically supporting our students.
Yeah, and so let me say, Mr. Marlin was supposed to be here this morning. It is not like him not to show up, and I've been texting him and trying to call him. So I hope everything's okay. We're gonna definitely try to reschedule him to come. So I'm really happy that we have, Ms. Deal here with us this morning from the Georgia Department of Education. One of the things that we're doing with the scores, over the past few years, now that we are on the list, the federally designated list, what that means is we had some data dips, right? And they look at, you guys have followed CCRPI, and if you haven't, this is the time to do so. So when you look at CCRPI, we'll bring Mr. Rowland back to kind of dig into that with you. It shows you how schools are scored or graded, if you will. And it's based on their content mastery, it's based on Georgia Milestones data, and they also take into consideration student health survey data, which that particular survey, our third graders do that survey, our parents, and all of our staff. So all of that factors into CCRPI. Where the data is concerned, we're looking at what is it that we're doing to close gaps in reading and in math. So we do have this new curriculum that some of you like and some of you hate. Our teachers feel the same way, it just is. However, with this new curriculum, we were a little ahead of the curve because the state came out with new legislation that said we had to make a shift across the entire state of Georgia to what's called the science of reading. The science of reading is a different form of teaching reading to our students. When reading is that foundation and that fundamental block, the way we've been teaching reading has been fun, but it has not yielded what we needed our children to be in terms of being successful. So we have a great number of children leaving elementary school and going into middle and high school and still reading on an elementary level. And then those children are graduating in some way, very low, like barely missing the mark. They're leaving our schools if they're graduating, or they're dropping out, because that's a problem too. And then they're coming into our community and not being productive citizens. So Dr. Hooker has a charge to look at how are we preparing our students, not just for college, but how are we preparing them for career success as well? And what are we doing starting at this level? So year before last, we purchased Foundations, which is a curriculum that was started with kindergarten through second grade, and that was to build up the phonics instruction. Then we looked at adding it to pre-K. So now our pre-K babies get some of that before they move into kindergarten, which is already showing great gains. And that is why Mr. Brown was coming, because he wanted to show you that it's actually working. The other thing is the purchase of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum is a curriculum resource that has increased the rigor of what our students are getting. And I'm sure you've learned, even talking to your children, the conversations that they're having. We have kindergartners who participate in Socratic seminars, which is really amazing to me, but it's kind of funny at the same time. But they're able to sit in a circle and have conversations about our standards that are given to us by the state. They're having conversations about characters and what's the plot. They're using that language at kindergarten. So that rigor is happening, and we're seeing changes already in that data. Now, that CCRPI data, when we talk about content mastery in our various content areas, including science, social studies, and all, we also look at our groups, and we call them subgroups. So you have to have a minimum of 15 students to make up a subgroup. Mr. Roberts gonna think y'all so smart when he comes back, so y'all write this down so you can tell him that you understand this. But that 15 students is what they look at to say, okay, here is the target of where they should be performing, and it's a goal, right? So we're not gonna say 30% of our kids can read this year, and we want 90% of them read next year. That is impossible, because you got a lot of gaps to fill. So now we are filling that gap, moving that Foundations into third grade, and taking our fourth and fifth graders and into middle school, and working to fill some phonics gaps that our students never received. Before, when we were doing whole language reading instruction, what that was is when, and you guys are familiar with this, when our children would be in reading class and the teacher would call them to a group, they had a red group, blue group, and they sat in the back of the room with light readers, and they were working together. But then some of those kids who couldn't read were pulled out and gone to another location, and they were working on something different. And so that wasn't meeting the needs, and that is why, not just here at BIT, but across the state, our reading scores and across the country have been plummeting. And so now, what's happened is we have this new curriculum that follows the science of reading, which is about putting them in front of instruction, everybody getting the same type of access to that instruction, because we've also been doing a disservice to our students by not providing them grade level instruction. So that small group of kids that we talked about that gets pulled out because they couldn't quite read that work, well, they might have been a third grader doing kindergarten level work. Well, how are they ever gonna catch up, right? And so now, one of the things that you've heard of is that we're doing more what we call tier 1 instruction. So we're bringing all of the children in and meeting their needs by scaffolding that. So back to that data, what we're looking at is how are we making shifts in the work that's going to get with Davis #1 off that federally designated list. Now they're on the, when you get on, you're on for 3 years, but you have to show gains along the way. And so part of that work is, I'll get back to you in 1 second. Part of that work is having support like Ms. Deal, who is from the state office. She comes here once or twice a week. I was gonna say, she's here more than me, once or twice a week, to help support instruction. This week they were there to look at curriculum planning with teachers and talk through what planning looks like. The state, because we're on the list, is also giving additional funds to support the work. So the state has provided funds for an additional instructional coach that is just specific to reading. That's going to help work with our teachers around reading. That's going to help them. And also, there are RESA, which is our Regional Educational Support Agency, our RESA department, who also helps, and they come once or twice a week with Ms. Deal to help support the work that's happening. So our goal is, as a state school now, there's an influx of support. At the district level, we have to go above and beyond what we do for every school. So I have to increase my visits, increase my observations, think about what's really happening, how do we support those types of things. And we actually have this year 3 schools that are on that state list. And so this is the first time WIT has been on that list. And that's alarming, because you're thinking, well, we've never been on a list like this. But the reason we're here is because our data has been trending downward, and we have got to get in front of that. I think it's important that we keep that at the forefront, because the goal is to get off the list, and that's why I was excited about Mr. Garland coming, because we're already trending in the right direction based on the things that have been put in place to support instruction.
Thanks for that. I kind of wanted to get to like the slide you have on the board, Principal Dean, and what you were saying earlier about just like supporting teachers and opening the line of communication so that you are hearing the same things we're hearing. And it actually kind of relates to what you were talking about, because I'm just mentioning this because it's like a specific thing, but I'm hearing from my child's teachers that like the phonics stuff they think is working amazing and that they love it, but the wit and wisdom they feel like is really not working. And they feel like when they're sort of just told, like, they're like, you have to teach this, like, I can't remember the words y'all use, like with fealty or fidelity. And I guess that's an area where I feel like teachers start feeling not supported if they're like, and I know that this is a district policy, because I also think other people around the district have similar feedback based on other teachers at other schools I've talked to, that the wit and wisdom just isn't working very well. So I'm just mentioning that because that's what I'm hearing from teachers, and I think that's like a big piece, and I think that what they're telling me is like only the children who already are reading at like a really high level are really getting it. Not like the Socratic seminars, like those seem to be going really well, but that actual like reading thing is not bringing those kids up. I'm just putting that out there, not that we have to discuss it, but that's what I'm hearing. And then I just wanted to, when Liz mentioned earlier about the visitor policy, sometimes I think what happens is we want to get in the school, whatever, we see a dojo thing that's like the document from the district, like that's not like a friendly message, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying, the effect is chilling on parents, I guess is what I mean. That like, it feels like, not like, oh, sign into the school, here's a link to the policy, it's still, you can still get in, we still want you to come have lunch, whatever. Because I think y'all still think that, but it's just that like that message kind of gets lost in translation, because what we as parents see is like that Word document that you can't hardly open up on your phone. And then I guess there's like a form, but like that's not in the policy that we see. Like I didn't even know there was a form that teachers were filling out. So I think it's stuff like that that ends up kind of making parents feel like not welcome. And so I think maybe it's just kind of like some of it could be addressed by just like a messaging kind of thing. Like, that's all.
And I agree with you. I think we can tweak it. You know, I think it's something we can definitely look at, because we talked about it just this week. We can definitely tweak that. And I think one of the things that's happening, I want to address or answer 2 things. One of the things that's happening is there are some new systems being put in place in this building where there haven't been. And I'm just going to be totally transparent, because I've been here for 3 years now. There were not very many systems in place in this building. And Dr. Hanks is shaking her head because she's been here through that time. And right now, that's uncomfortable, because we have a new principal who's trying to do things by the book, and she's putting systems in place that are part of policy, because she'll ask, can I do this? How does this look? And I'll say, well, this is the policy. Well, this is what, happens. Or here's some things that happens in other buildings. Or talk to your colleagues. And so that's an uncomfortable shift. We have teachers who've been here for many, many years, and they've gone through lots of principals. I've been in this district for 26 years, so I've seen all the principals that come to this building. But I think it's important to note that when new leadership comes in, you get a new boss, there's always something new. I like football, so let's think about it in a football way. When the new football head coach comes, he brings his new staff, he puts new things in place, some of the players are like, that's not what I came here for, and they get in the portal and they wanna leave, right? And so that happens, but I think you're right, we can improve communication. That's definitely something we can focus on, but I also think that we have to recognize that there are some things being put in place that just weren't here. When Dr. McGuire left, he and I talked about, tell me, everyone's gonna give their input on what kind of leader they'd like to see come behind you. Can you tell me who you think should come behind you? Tell me what you think needs to happen. And Dr. McGuire told me, he said, somebody's gonna have to be a little bit more firm than I was. And y'all can call and ask him. That is what he told me. They gotta be a little bit more firm than what I was. And so that's important. I think that it's not so much that we're, how we do it is very important. Because I think how you communicate and what you say to people goes a long way, right? But I also think that putting new systems in place, the visual thing we can tweak, but just new systems in general. Yes, teacher, if you leave the building, you have to sign out now. Whereas before you didn't have to sign out. You just go out the back door, go pick up your lunch, and come on back. Well, you can't do that anymore. But Principal Dean says, I gotta sign out. Well, I gotta sign out. Well, the reason you gotta sign out is because it's really a policy. Everybody does that in every other building. But you've been here so long, you didn't know that. Like, you have to do that. And the reason you do that is because if this building burns down, and we're all out counting everybody, we're gonna be looking for you, and you're down at Chick-fil-A. So just tell us where you're going. Those are the types of systems I'm talking about. Little things that have been put in place. But it is uncomfortable. The second thing is the curriculum. Let me ask you a question. Does anyone know the name of our previous reading curriculum? We did some Lucy Calkins writing. Yeah, but you all know the name of this current one, right? What's the name of the current one?
Wit and wisdom.
See, everybody knows that. Even the children know that. But your children never came home and said, well, in Pontus and Pinell today, we did this. That was our previous curriculum. So what has happened is we have changed how our teachers instruct. It's hard. If I've been in a classroom for 15 years and now you tell me to do something a little different, that's hard. And they don't, some of them, I'm not gonna say all of them, some of them don't like it. But one thing they can't argue about is that it's not making a difference. The data is trending. It's moving. Our data is at the bottom. When this school sits on a list like this, it means this school is performing in the bottom 25% of the state. 5%, thank you. Yeah. Bottom 5% of the state. That's what that list means. And so, yeah, I agree. We gotta make sure we're doing the right things for everybody in this building, but we're in the business of educating children. And we are not doing that right now because we're on a list that says our school is performing in the bottom 5% of the entire state. That is problematic. And so we gotta put things in place that's gonna move our children and prepare them to be those productive citizens we want them to be. But again, this reading curriculum, y'all, it's a curriculum. It is changing how they do the work, and that people don't like change. Change is hard. And my husband's a pastor, and the one thing that he says is gonna always be, change is the one consistent thing you can bet on. It's inevitable. It's always gonna happen. And so we just have to know that, yes, I know that teachers are complaining about our reading curriculum. They're not just complaining here. It's a few in every building saying, this ain't working. I'm like, is it not? But I just saw your SPED student who couldn't read actually participate in this lesson very well. It's working. It is.
That's like the opposite of what I hear from teachers who I feel like are good teachers. But also this idea that we know the name is good. Like, I don't want my kid to know the name of the curriculum. I want them to come to school and read and do work, but not I don't think the fact that my kid knows it's called Wit and Wisdom is
most of our children
a good thing.
That's how our teachers refer to it. They don't refer to it as, it's time for reading.
I mean, I'm just saying that doesn't tell me that that's but we don't have to get, I don't know, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. Yeah. But I think this gets back to supporting teachers, because I think when they feel like they're saying this isn't working and they're just told, no, do it more by the book, they start feeling more like, why am I even a teacher? Am I like a robot who just has to read these instructions exactly as they are printed, blah, blah, blah. When I try and say this isn't working, that just kind of like hits a wall and bounces back at me. And I'm bringing this up again just because I think this is like, goes back to like the support thing. It's like this kind of thing that they're just like, well.
And listen, I don't wanna hold, because we have some people that are walking out, I don't wanna hold everyone up on that one topic. However, if you want to stay and talk about it, I'm willing to stay here, I got all that. And talk about it if you like to. But I do want to give an opportunity for anything else, but I'm happy to stay after and talk more about, the reading curriculum or teachers' feelings, because we're not negating that. We hear it, but we also, when we hear it, we go into the rooms and say, let's talk about what's not working, show me what's not working, tell me what you think is wrong. We do those things, and I think it's important that you all know that we are supporting in that vein. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, coming from being a former middle school teacher for 10 years, it's gonna be a rough couple of years. I just want y'all to know that. The next couple of years is gonna be rough academically because there's so much of an uplift that we have to do because of the new curriculum. But I can speak to following a scripted curriculum and the growth that it shows. When I first got to this district, I piloted a program, and Ms. Worthy might know back in the day, I piloted that program for the first time in the district. I had all tier 3 students, and I was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Tier 3 students are the students that are at the very, very bottom right before they're, get tested to go into get, special education starts. But I did that. I read that curriculum. I had a book. It was scripted, and I did it, and I had the best growth in the entire school district that very first year that we did. I was also going to say, speaking to, I don't like change our math curriculum. It's called Carnegie Learning. The first year, we did it. I hated it. I'll be honest with you. I was like, what is this? Kids can't do this. This is so heavy to read. They cannot do this. But they can do it. You just gotta, and I know some teachers feel like because someone is telling them to do something that they feel like less than a teacher. But I'll be honest, the strategies that worked 20 years ago, they're not gonna work with this group of kids. They're really not. Sitting in, drills, all that stuff, it does not work for our children anymore. And I've seen that shift in the last 10 years. And I'm third grade. So I just wanted to put that in your mind, coming from a teacher, a former teacher to a parent. It's gonna be hard. It does work. And I hate that the teachers feel that way, but I think that you gotta change your mindset. You always gotta have a growth mindset. And it takes years for things to work. We can't just stop. We can't just stop something because I feel like it doesn't work for my kids. Well, you gotta figure out a way to make it work for your kids. You gotta use that curriculum to figure out ways to make it work for your kids. And if you have suggestions, when you see your kids from home, see your teachers for suggestions. You see something cool that might work. I see adversity all the time. I saw this, I think it might work. I don't know. But it's about using the curriculum to better meet the needs of our children at the end of the day. I've seen some 8th graders, y'all, who cannot read. When I say cannot read, they cannot read at all. They were not special education students, they're just regular gen ed Tier 1 students, but they cannot read. And you think, how could this 8th grader, this 13-year-old child make it to 8th grade without being able to read? And they have no services. Well, I'll be honest, it comes from some of those classrooms where the teacher's like, I don't like this curriculum, I'm doing whatever I want to do. And yeah, I'm going to do the curriculum, and then when you get to your classroom, they do something totally different. So those are some conversations you also need to have with your children. Like, are you really sitting down, paying attention to what you're supposed to do? Are you really interviewing with them? If they've never been able to do it, if they've never been forced to read or forced to do anything, they're never going to do it. I had a 7th grader last year told me the last time he read a book was in kindergarten. The last time he held a book and read it was in kindergarten. So what did I do? I challenged that kid to read a book, right? You check in with me every day, you read your book. I get you a prize. I'm a math teacher. First of all, I'm a math teacher. But they're ready to sit kindergarten. And I don't know what that says about the school or what it says about the parents, but you start teaming back the rest of the books in kindergarten. So I just wanted to speak to that. It does, I think that it does work. It's just gonna take some time. We're not gonna see, and the growth is minute, it's like incremental. If we go up 2%, man, we celebrating 2% because we went back to 2%.
Would you have something else on the slide? Or, I think there's an announcement or something.
Can I say one thing to our concern is that if we don't see a team that's ready to work together, that feels inspired, we're worried how successful can we be in those efforts if we don't address that issue first. And so I think that's why we're trying to figure out where the gaps are and how staff feels, because they're the ones who work with our kids every day. And we want to make sure that they don't leave. We've seen a lot of success with the staff members we work with. Like, we've seen them do really good, impressive work. And we want them to stay. And we want them to rise to this occasion. So that's really just our intention. We want our staff to feel supported and to be able to rise to this occasion. We do realize that being a change maker is not fun, and it is hard. And I like the policy and I like procedure. It makes me feel safe and comfortable. But at the same time, like, they're just communication issues and they're just team building issues. And I think we need a little bit of healing between all of us that we could do to come together and meet each other. Does that make sense?
It does, and I thank you, because I think when you share what you hear, it's important. But that's as far as you can take it, right? All you can do is share what you hear and then allow us to try to attempt to address it. Because again, there's nothing more that you can actually do to help fix the issue besides sharing, hey, this is how this person is feeling, and then we have to allow the administrators to help, combat that. The other thing is, I'll add, when they shared even this data in the faculty meeting, initially, nobody wanted to speak to it. So we talked about that, and I said to Principal Dean, one thing you might consider, this is a coaching moment, you might even consider sending out an anonymous, survey that says, what's your feedback? You might not have shared it during the faculty meeting. Do you have any additional feedback? What else can we do? Because we're asking, but people have to tell more than a friend or more than just a parent. They gotta tell somebody else, because if we don't know, we can't fix it. So what I'm hearing today is communication. I've written that down. I'm hearing we can tweak some things. I've written that down. I'm hearing your feelings. When Principal Dean and I have our meeting, we'll walk through all the things that have occurred, but we'll walk through those things with the intentionality of focusing on how do we meet the needs of these children, and how do we support these children so that we're doing the right things collectively as adults, because we have to do it that way. So I definitely hear you, and I think it's something that we can move forward with. And you're right, there is turnover, there's been turnover in administrators in this building, and not so much teachers. That's a red flag for me. Because that makes me ask the question, well, why principals do it? Right? And so that's something that we have to talk through, because that's a problem. When you don't have consistent leadership, you can't grow. You cannot. And so consistent leadership has been a thing. If you think about some of our higher performing schools in the district, consistent leadership has been there. When you think about it, this school has had, in the last 10 years, maybe how many, Carrie? Because you've been there long, because you adapted. 5 or 6? 6 people in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Y'all, that's a problem too. So it makes me scratch my head and say, well, wait a minute, how come the people will stay? And so we want teachers to feel supported, but we also have to support our leadership to be able to stay in the building and work with teachers too. And so when people say I'm leaving, I don't want anyone to leave, but I also don't want anyone to stay where they're not happy. I want them to be in a place where they can feel fulfilled, because the thing is, somebody is staying. And why? We have to look at both sides. Somebody's not complaining. Why? Something is working. Why is that working? And why is it not working for this person? That's why I say when we bring their concern, that's all we can do is hear it, then we have to go and dig deeper to figure out how to solve it. Because this is a two-way street. Yes, we have teachers that want to leave. Some of them want to leave because this work is about to get real hard. We're the bottom 5%. This is about to get real. This is not going to be easy. This is tough work. And this is all she does. She supports schools across this area from the state. This is not going to be, they have so many people in their business right now walking through these doors. Ms. Deal and her team met with teachers yesterday during their planning, just looking at planning processes, and they said, open way to talk and say, well, this is how I feel about this. But then there comes a time where I gotta walk into a classroom. Now, half these people don't even know who I am, so I always try to shoot a quick email saying, hey, this is who I am. But I gotta walk into a room and say, well, what's happening here? And I look at this from multiple perspectives. I look at this from a native Athenian. I look at this from the fact that I'm a Clark County graduate. I look at this from the fact that I'm a parent as well. You know, I think all of those things are factors. I have to say, well, do I want this for my child? And no, I don't want my child in a school that's the bottom 5% in the whole state and nobody's thinking about it. So yes, I want to hear what the teachers need, but I need to know why the principals leave. So as a district person, that's on me. I gotta figure out, well, are we running people off around here? Like, what's happening? Like, I have to ask those questions. So I hear you when you say, we're gonna lose some teachers, yeah, but we've lost too many principals in this building. And I really gotta dig deep into that data as well. I gotta talk to these teachers and say, tell me what's wrong, what's not working, what can we do to support? But then we also gotta look at, well, what can I do to I gotta try to keep a leader in this building as well. Because that's my charge from the superintendent. I supervise her, I have a boss, and my boss's boss is Dr. Hooker. And when Dr. Hooker sends me as his designee, like he did today, to speak about those survey results, which is why I can stand 10 toes down and say, yes, that was wrong information, then I can say that because I have to report back to them and say, here is what we're doing it with. Holly doesn't just support Principal Dean. There are people that come and meet with us as district leaders to say, what are you doing to support that school? What are you doing that's different? So there's a level of accountability that I have to ensure that I'm meeting your needs as well, and that we're meeting the needs of these children. All right? Yes, ma'am.
I have fourth graders. I've been here a while. I've been through a bunch of principals. I am excited about policy. My child walked home from school and was home from school for about 30 minutes before anybody knew he was gone here, and we still go here. So, and there was no fence, and that we wanted let's put a fence at the playground because there's this little cutout right back here, and he just went home. He was a kindergartner, and he was gone, and they still, I don't know how long he was gone for. But, so I like policy. I want there to be more policy. I wanted that with Dr. McGuire. I met with him about wait a minute, how can my kid just disappear? What is the policy? And he told me to tell my kindergartner not to walk home anymore. And I was like, yeah, we did that. But he's also not functioning as an adult human yet. So he won't probably ever, but that's besides the point. But so, but I wonder if there's a way for us as parents to hear it. And I want to look at, not to be done with the school year, but next year, what I always take away from here at the beginning, that first meet your teacher, is that I always walk out of here going, well, but is there a sign-up list to read with a kid? And if there's a kid who's behind, I don't want to read to my kid. I read to my kid every night, and I already know that kid. But I want to support the school as a whole. Is there a way at the beginning of the school year that we can be more intentional about telling parents how to get involved? Because they all come to meet their teacher, right? Everybody is coming at that moment to meet their teacher. So tell me now. Tell me, it doesn't matter what kid it is, but once a week, if you can come into school and read with a kid who doesn't necessarily have that at home, let's do that. And so I feel that to me, as I look at, I'm on my way out of here and I'm on to middle school, but I hope the same is true at middle school. But I want to be more intentional at the beginning of the year about how I can be involved and how I can help. Because I don't need to read to my teacher.
And some parents can't get to the school, but I know that when I was teaching in elementary school, I had parents who supported my classroom doing things at home to make for the classroom. So there's a lot of ways to support the school. Some on campus, some maybe things that they're doing maybe quarterly when they can have time to get to the school with their jobs. And sometimes it's, there's things that teachers need that they don't have time to do. I had a parent who used to help me color things to make games for kids. And so I think that's a great suggestion, because I think most parents want to know how can they support, whether it's with field trips or reading or supporting kids with who need extra help with some of the skills. So,
I don't think we're all mad at principals. Right? We all know everybody has a boss, right? I have a boss. So when she's putting a policy in place, I feel if there was a hey y'all, this isn't me either. Like, not to, but like, Ray, just pass that buck up. Like, just tell us, like, Dr. Hooker said I gotta do it this way. So then, like, we're not, then I feel like then we're on the same team. Right, like, that is part of teamwork, is that, like, everybody's boss is telling you what to do. So, like, I don't want this.
We'll have her say it in a different kind of way.
Right, exactly. Like, just be like, like, slide that to me in a side comment, and then I'm like, then I'm less mad.
You're like, I'm not even talking to her.
But
I get it. No, thank you.
I just want to say, from an outsider who's coming in and getting to know the school, I commend you for being present today and sharing things so openly and communicating so clearly questions you have and concerns and suggestions. And I think the suggestions are, to me, one of the biggest takeaways. But I've worked in a lot of schools. This is my 37th year in education, and I've worked in a lot of places where we didn't have folks come to the school like you're doing this morning. And it is so greatly valued, and I know that sometimes the feedback we get from you, we may have to think about it a little while and figure out a way to do some of those solutions. And sometimes it takes a little time to put some of those practices in place. But your input is so valued, and I think it's just really great that y'all meet monthly, and I hope that you'll continue to build this and give us feedback. And one of the things I'd love to see y'all do is take some of the data from the surveys and the things that you have, and y'all do some of these data analysis and look at some of the work and give us feedback from the parents' lens. The communication is definitely something I think all schools struggle with. And you think you're communicating it, but are we getting the message out to all stakeholders? Not just parents, but even businesses and leaders in the community. I'm excited for y'all to see James Barlament's presentation, and I hope we can get him here next week, or the next time we meet. I'm sorry, not next week, this week. I was really encouraged at how the district is monitoring progress along the way. They're not waiting until we get that summative data at the end of the year to make changes. They are watching things and looking at trends, attendance, tardies, discipline, academic progress. And I was so encouraged at the data that we're already seeing a trend moving in the right direction. And I want y'all to be able to share that information with him too, because that lets you know that there are some things that are working. And as far as my RESA partner, his name is Chuck Bell. RESA support, they're kind of a regional group. They support, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 school districts. And he's my partner. We'll be here each week. And our role is not to come in and yank the rug out from everything that's going. It's to kind of be a coach on the side and look for what's working. How can we build on that? And when we met with the teachers the other day and observed them the week before, we're going to be going in and out of a lot of classrooms. There's a lot of opportunities here to build on what's already working. And how can we strengthen what's working, and how can we support the things that aren't working in ways that helps everybody grow? Because from my lens looking at it is, we want to make sure all teachers across the grade level are providing quality standards-based instruction to students where everybody has the same opportunities. We don't want to see classrooms where some teachers are stronger at it and some are weaker at it. We want to make sure we reduce that variability, because that's what we're here for, is to make sure our students are growing, and we want every student across the grade level and every grade level to grow and optimize on that. I'm encouraged by the focus the district is doing, where it's less on teacher talk and more on student engagement. Increasing student engagement and their opportunities to have hands-on learning definitely impacts their retaining the information that they're being presented. When we grew up, our teachers talked to us a lot. We did sit and get, and that works for some kids, but it doesn't work for all kids, and it doesn't necessarily help all kids grow. And I'm very encouraged by Dr. Hooker's focus on what's called the opportunity myth, but really looking at how our students are engaged daily in every activity that we plan. And then also, how are we monitoring that work to ensure that they are growing the way we need them to grow and that they're mastering those standards and adapting our instruction to meet those needs for students. And so, there's a lot of work we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and doing, but it's good work. And we encourage the work to be done in every school, not just an identified school. It's research-based work that we'll be focused on. But I will tell you, we didn't get here overnight, and we're not gonna swing the ship in overnight. It's gonna be a gradual process, but we look for those opportunities of success to celebrate that. And I really want you to see that from James Parliament the next time you'll meet.
I wanna be respectful of your time, and I also know that it doesn't feel like it, but lunch will be starting probably right now.
We've come later, so thank you for that.
No, thank you. I do want Principal Lee to be able to share those upcoming events and, possibly close us out. And then, like I said, we'll hang around. That way, if you have a couple of questions, you can. But I do want to be respectful, because I feel, some of you might be sitting here thinking, hey, they're holding hostage, they'll hold it up. So I wanna make sure we allow you to leave if you need to leave.
Okay, thank you both. So here are some upcoming events. I think I put most of them for April, but maybe not quite all of them, because the last Principal's Coffee is on April the 12th. But as you are aware, we have spring break this week. So students and faculty and staff will be out all week. On April 13th, we have the CYDO basketball banquet. So if you're a student who was a 4th or 5th grader who participated in basketball through this particular league, that will be on April 13th at 1 at Hillsman. If you have a young lady who was playing basketball, we did not get most of those uniforms back, so we need the uniforms, please, prior to the banquet. We do have some exciting things happening, on April 11th. We actually have 3 grade levels going on field trips. So our pre-K is going on field trip to YMCA, and our 4th and 5th graders, I believe it's in the Classic Center, are going to see a performance about Linden Town, which I think would be very, you heard it? Oh, okay. No, I was just making sure you knew that they were going on field trip.
Oh, I'll be there.
Oh, okay.
That's where I work.
And so I think that's going to be I think that's a really great opportunity for students to learn some of Athens history and, what took place, how that came about. So I think that's going to be a really good opportunity for them, and I'm excited that we were invited and the district was in. The Wildcat Walk, sorry, but that is on April the 12th, and the last Principal Coffee is also that morning. So you should have received some information about that. Ms. Lakeem has been, the chairperson with that, and pushed out the video and all of this wonderful stuff. Oh, sorry, I put the basketball game on, that's why I didn't mean to do that. The next PTO meeting will be on April 16th at 6 p.m. If you have a rising 6th grader, exciting time in life, you're going to be transitioning to middle school, and to help with that, you're going to have parent night at Hillsman. That is on April the 17th, and it begins at 5:30. We have Wildcat here on the month of the month, on April 18th. Relay for Life is on April 19th. It starts at 6. It's in Oconee County. I forgot exactly where, but we'll have more details. And then, initially we talked about a Title I presentation happening today. We are all Title I schools, and there are some components that you are required to present, because that's federally funded. We receive federal funds for Title I, so there are some things that we are obligated to do. One of them is present in the fall and then present in the spring. But when we present in the spring, it's actually to gather input from all of you, our parent community. So once we figure out when that will happen, I'll give you the date, so hopefully that you can come in and attend. And we want to try to have a few different options, maybe a morning and afternoon meeting, maybe an afternoon and a virtual meeting, to try to get all of our stakeholders in and have the ability to provide that input. So I know the screen is filled, but there's a lot going on. As I said, in the spring, it will be just as full for May, if not more full. The end of the school year is usually a very, very busy time, no matter what level you're at. Does anybody have any questions about the events that are coming up? Okay. Well, as Dr. Worthy said, we will be here present if you had additional questions.
great.